Chapter 30. Carl watched as Schaefer staggered down the hallway towards the stairwell, looking around wildly. "It's here!" Schaefer shouted again. "Come on out where we can see you, you bastard!" There wasn't anything there, so far as Carl could see. Schaefer was yelling and clutching at his throat, but there wasn't anything there. It had to be some kind of stupid cop trick, Carl decided, after an instant of confusion, and he wasn't going to fall for it. He jumped to his feet and raised his shotgun. "Yeah, sure it is, Schaefer," he said, as he marched through the spray of water to get a clear shot at his opponent. "It's here, it's there, and everywhere. Talk show's over, pig. Say bye-bye." Schaefer looked up at the barrel of the gun, at Carr's finger tightening on the trigger, at Carr's grinning, maniacal face, and at the waterfall behind him. The spray from the ruined pipes, where blue sparks were crackling and crawling across a familiar silhouette. He tried to shout a warning to Carr, but it felt as if something were caught in his throat. And besides, the bastard was about to blow his brains out. Why warn him? And then any warning would have been superfluous, as the alien creature appeared out of thin air, its invisibility screen down for the moment, one taloned hand closing around Carr's neck from behind. "The water," Schaefer said, his throat clear again. "Jesus, the water shorted something out." The creature picked up the gang boss easily, and Schaefer ducked again as Carr fired. The shotgun blast went safely over his head, just as the warning shot had before. "What in the hell?" Carr managed to say. He twisted in the thing's grip, trying to get a look at it, trying to see what was holding him up by his throat, as if he weighed no more than a kitten. "That's what killed your boys, Carr," Schaefer shouted. "Those goddamn things have been tracking me ever since. It didn't give a damn who you were, Carr. Your men were just trophies to it." "Oh yeah, trophy this, piss-face," Carr shouted back as he struggled. He spat, managing to hit a corner of the thing's metal mask. "Say bye-bye," the creature replied in a close approximation of Carr's own voice of a few moments before. It reached up and placed its other hand atop Carr's head, preparing to twist. Schaefer, looking around, spotted his own dropped gun. He dived for it, calling, "Not yet, pal." He came up with the gun held like a club. He swung it by the barrel and caught the monster on the side of the head. Startled, but clearly uninjured, the thing threw Carr aside and looked at Schaefer. The gadget on its shoulder popped up and began to swivel, and Schaefer dived sideways as a blue-white fireball blew a 2-foot hole in the wall. He rolled and brought the shotgun up and realized the barrel was bent, the action twisted into uselessness. He'd hit the alien harder than he had realized. A blow that bad that would bend a shotgun would have killed a man instantly. Well, as he told Carr, this thing was worse than a man, and a hell of a lot tougher. He didn't dare fire the gun. It would probably blow up in his face. He flung it aside and looked up at the hunter from outer space. Its expression was hidden behind its mask. He couldn't tell if it was angry, frightened, amused, or just bored. And even if he could see its face, how could he read those inhuman features, that mouth with the layers of fangs? The snake-like braids, or whatever they were, trailed down across its shoulders. The ray gun or laser cannon or whatever the hell it was on its shoulder was pointed straight at Schaefer's face. It didn't fire. Instead, the creature raised one hand, and the pair of jagged blades mounted to the back of its wrist suddenly snapped out into an extended position, projecting well past its clenched fist. Schaefer had seen blades like that before, on the arm of the monster that he had killed in the jungle, and on the monsters that attacked Echeverra's camp. One swipe of those could tear out a man's throat, or lay open his chest. This one wasn't shooting at him, because it wanted to take him on, hand to hand. More macho, mano-y-mano shit. And this time, Schaefer didn't have any way to run or dodge. He didn't have any surprise weapons. He'd have to fight on the creature's own terms. Which meant dying. Well, hell. He'd known he'd have to die sometime. "Come on then," Schaefer said, crouching, bracing himself. "This is what you've been waiting for, isn't it? Your chance to get the one that killed your buddy. Your shot at one of the tough ones. Go ahead then. Finish it." "Let's not, and say we did," called a voice from the shadows by the building's front door, a good 30 feet away. The creature started to turn. "You're under arrest," Rash began, as he raised and sighted in the Soviet-built shoulder-mount anti-tank gun he had hauled in from the van. God only knew what the Jamaicans had thought they wanted with something like that. Then he got a good look at the creature and said, "Screw it." He pulled the trigger, and the rocket tore through the intervening distance in a fraction of a second. Still, Schaefer thought that the alien may have been able to dodge. It was fast enough, he'd seen that. But it didn't dodge. Maybe it was too surprised. The thing's body shielded Schaefer from the worst of the blast, but the entire building shook, and the walls on either side of the hallway buckled outwards, plaster and shattered wood showered down. The flow of water was abruptly transformed from a scattered spray into a steady spill down one broken wall, as the remains of the pipes above the passage vanished completely in the explosion. When the dust had mostly cleared, Schaefer climbed to his feet, took one look at the condition of the building, and ran for the door. He almost tripped over the dead alien, but he didn't stop to gloat. He could hear wood creaking ominously. Rash was waiting on the stoop. He'd been farther away from the blast, but unshielded, and his forehead was bleeding where a bit of shrapnel had nicked him. Plaster dust had powdered his hair and clothes. Together, the two detectives ran into the street, back towards Rash's van. They were about halfway across when Carr stumbled from the wreckage, a yard or so ahead of a great crash of masonry as a wall fell in. All three men turned at the sound and stood, staring. "Anyone else in there?" Rash called. Carr shook his head. "None of mine. We were moving out. I was just back here checking. Schaefer here got lucky with his timing." His voice didn't have its usual sardonic edge. He sounded shaken. "You saw that thing, right?" Schaefer asked. Carr nodded, backing down the stoop as Schaefer came up beside him. Rash was back at the van, rummaging for something. "Any of this sinking in then?" Schaefer asked. "Or are you twice as stupid as you look?" "Oh, I get the picture," Carr said. "And okay, maybe your cops didn't trash my men and take out Lamikins. But that thing's pieces, right? So it's over." Schaefer shook his head. "That was what I thought the first time." Rash, emerging from the van with the alien mask in his hand, called out, "It's not over, Carr. Like the song says, we've only just begun." He held up the mask, scanned the streets with it, then turned his attention to the dark skies above. He growled, then handed the mask to Schaefer. "Over there," he said, pointing, "and coming this way." Schaefer looked, tracking the approaching ship's movement, and nodded. "They're not going to be very happy when they find what's left of their buddy," he said. "That's 2 down, and counting." He handed the mask back to Rash. "What are you two looking at?" Carr demanded. "There's nothing out there." Rash ignored him. He was watching the red-gold shape coming in over the rooftops, heading towards them. It was coming in low, and descending even farther. "Not very happy at all," Rash said. "Shut up and run, Carr." He took his own advice and sprinted for the van. This ship wasn't just cruising over the city. This ship was diving for them, in what looked for all the world like a strafing run. "Get down!" Schaefer shouted as something flashed. The 3 men dived to the pavement as the building behind them erupted into white fire and flying brick. Rash rolled over and looked through the mask. The ship had veered off and was looping back for another pass. The building's facade had a 10-foot hole in it where the door had been a moment before, a hole full of dust, firelight, and clattering brick fragments. "Come on," he yelled, leading the way towards an alley that he hoped would provide some shelter. The ship came back for its second run, and it was immediately obvious that the first had been a sighting shot. This time, the thing laid down a deafening barrage of blue-white fire that cut the entire building to bits. The 3 men stared, dumbfounded. "Jesus," Rash muttered, as the ship ceased its fire. It was past the building now, no longer had a clear shot. "So much for urban renewal," he said. "No yuppie's ever going to gentrify that place." "And no one's going to salvage anything of that dead one," Schaefer said grimly. They're making sure no one makes a trophy out of one of their own." "What the hell?" Carr shrieked. "What did that? What are we up against? I still don't fucking see anything." "Here, have a peek," Rash said, thrusting the mask in front of Carr's face and directing his gaze. Carr stared up at the departing spaceship. "Wild, huh?" Rash asked, glancing at Carr. "Just like War of the Worlds." Schaefer snorted. "They all died of a cold in that one, Rash. But I didn't notice that thing reaching for a tissue, did you?" Carr grunted, and Rash took the mask back. "The feds are scared of them," Schaefer said. "So it's going to be up to us to bring them down, let them know they aren't welcome here." He looked around. "We have to get off the streets, find some place to make a stand." Rash nodded. He scanned the sky quickly. "I don't see it right now," he said. "Let's get in the van and move. Talk while we drive." "They can track me," Schaefer said, gesturing towards his neck. "I know that," Rash said, "but maybe not that fast. Come on." Schaefer nodded, and the three men ran for the van. Rash took the driver's seat, Schaefer took shotgun, and Carr climbed back between the seats and saw the weapons. "Jesus," he said. "You got more stuff back here than I have in this whole goddamn city." "That's the point," Schaefer said. "When those things have swept up what's left of their pal, all hell is going to break loose, and we're going to need all the manpower we can put on the streets if we want to still be standing when they're done. That's what I came after you for in the first place, Carr. We want you and your boys to help us." Carr stared at him for a moment. "Why us?" he asked. "I mean, we aren't exactly your buddies, Schaefer. I always figured you'd like to see me dead. Hell, I know I'd like to see you dead." "Yeah, well, I need manpower, and your people may be scum, but at least they've got some guts," Schaefer said. "So I'm offering a truce, just till these alien geeks are gone. After that, it's back to business as usual." "I'd have figured for something like this you'd call out the goddamn army, not come looking for me." "The army's scared," Schaefer said. "They figure to let the aliens do what they want, and when they're done, they'll go home. Rash and I don't think that way. If those things are having fun, why would they leave? So here you are, talking to me. Here we are, with the guns back there. And you'll let us use all this hardware?" Schaefer nodded. "That's the deal, just for the duration. I don't know if we can take out their whole damn fleet. I don't know how many of them there are out there. But maybe we can make it a little less fun. So what do you say, punk? Feel like a little rock and roll?" Carr grinned. "You got it, Schaefer. Cops, aliens, I don't care who it is. Nobody offs my men without some serious payback. You supply the guns, and let me handle the rest."